Debate number 2. And this is a very important conversation. It's been a big buzz for the last several days. On April 20th, a ex-woman staffer of the Supreme Court came out and made some serious allegations against the sitting Chief Justice of India, and no less. Yesterday, the Supreme Court's Internal Probe Committee that was looking into her allegations dismissed those allegations, saying there is no substance, there is no evidence to substantiate that, and they gave the Chief Justice of India clean chit. What you saw today were protests in 2 different cities. There were protests earlier in the day that were held outside the Supreme Court in Delhi, where about 30 to 40 women activists and lawyers got together, held this protest. They obviously had to be moved away from there because Supreme Court is a sensitive zone. Section 144 had to be implemented. They were detained. Few hours later, a similar protest was then held in Bengaluru, where again activists came out. And now these people are demanding justice. They say that, tell us whether the due process was followed. They say that listen to the complainant, what she has to say. Allow her a lawyer if that's what she wants. Make the findings of this Internal Probe Committee of Supreme Court public. These are some of their demands. But please ensure that even if it's the Chief Justice of India, the due course of natural justice is followed. So I have very basic questions tonight. The fact of the matter is that on April 28, when these allegations were made, Chief Justice of India came out and he held an urgent, extraordinary hearing on Supreme Court on a Saturday. And he said that this is a threat to the independence of the judiciary, that these allegations are being made to malign him, that this is a larger conspiracy to threaten the judges. And he said this will not be acceptable. So is this actually a larger conspiracy to somehow intimidate or threaten the judges of the Supreme Court? Or is there a possibility that the due course was not followed, due procedure was not followed for the complaint filed by a woman staffer of the Supreme Court? And if the complaint was filed, what should have been the process? Was that process followed? Did we do justice to this complaint? This is a timeline broadly of what has happened. April 29th, the committee began its hearing. There were 3 judges of Supreme Court sitting on that bench. 2 of them were women judges, by the way. On April 30th, the complainant withdrew her case from the committee. She said, I'm not going to be part of this. I wanted a lawyer to be with me. You didn't allow me that. I feel intimidated. I am fearful that this committee is not going to do justice to me. And she backed out. The bench then went on to carry out these proceedings ex parte without the complainant. In fact, the CJI then appeared before the panel and they finished their report and they gave him the clean chit. Let's straight away go across to our panelists. We've got some experts joining us this evening. Anubha Rastogi is a lawyer joining us from Mumbai. Ashish Dikshit, advocate of the Supreme Court. And Kavita Srivastava, National General Secretary of PUCL. Now, let me go across to Anubha Rastogi first and ask her this question. Anubha, I believe there is also a statement and a plea to retired judges that about 300 activists and lawyers have actually put out. Are you a signatory to that?
Yes, I'm a signatory to that.
So why is that? Why did you feel the need for this kind of a plea?
See, the basic need was simply because all of the processes that the Supreme Court itself in the year 1997 in the Vishakha judgment had set out, and as a result of which we even got the law on sexual harassment at workplace, none of those processes were getting followed. And very clearly, even where the complainant was speaking up, it was clear that she's not been given a hearing and natural justice processes are not being followed. Therefore, it was very, very important that voices are heard, opinions are issued, and we appeal to judges who are sitting judges, we appeal to the Supreme Court, and we also appeal to the retired judges to also prevail and speak up their mind about the fact that how this actually does impact the independence of the judiciary in this manner. where they don't follow the law that they themselves set out, and how it really impacts how Supreme Court really looks at women.
Okay,
when,
so
when there is an allegation against one of them.
But just for just a layman to understand, what is is there a procedure which is written down as to what has to be done if such a complaint is made against the Chief Justice of India, because he's literally, you know, head of the administration of Supreme Court. He may be first amongst equals with the Supreme Court senior most judges, but still, what happens when the complaint is against the CJI? Is it in black and white, or is there a grey area there, Anubha?
See, so as far as the complaint against being a complaint being against the Chief Justice of India is concerned, the Supreme Court has its own procedure very well laid down. There is also the law which is very, very clear. Even if there is a complaint against the highest person in a workplace, here it being the Chief Justice of India, the committee is the one which is expected to look into it, which is mandated to look into and inquire into a complaint of this nature, irrespective of who the respondent is. So even if the allegations here are against the Chief Justice of India, that shouldn't really make a difference, because the procedure is supposed to be outside of who the respondent is or who the complainant is. So even if the complainant is the one who's more powerful than the respondent, even that shouldn't matter. And that process is already set out. It's there on the website. It's been set out in 2013. The law is there in 2013. The guidelines for the process are very, very clearly set out in 2015. There is no reason why anything other than that process was set up and was done in the manner that it was done.
Okay, let me ask Ashish Dikshit.
Set out for itself.
Okay, Ashish Dikshit, I'm going to come to you. Do you agree that the process that has been laid out very clearly and that wasn't followed?
See, in this case, the spirit of the Sexual Harassment Act, which is an act of 2013, has to be followed, and I think which is the act which has been followed. And I'll give you examples that how it was done in the present case. First, when the allegation was made by the complainant on April 19, she alleged that the incident took place from October to December. The act clearly says that the limitation period is 3 months. The Supreme Court could have very well said that your complaint is barred by limitation and we are not going to entertain it. But the Supreme Court overlooked that thing and entertained the complaint and set up a 3 judges panel. Second thing, when the complainant made a request that because she has an apprehension on the inclusion of Justice Ramanna, Justice Ramanna recused from the matter, though he was not obliged to do that. There was no law which permits any recusal on the apprehension. There has to be a valid apprehension. But Justice Ramanna, keeping in mind that there is a request, he recused. Then there were 2 judges appointed, 2 women judges. This is also with the spirit of the Sexual Harassment Prevention Act of the 2013, because it says the committee which inquires into the allegation should have a majority of women. So in this case also, out of 3, 2 judges were women judges. Number 3. And third issue which will demonstrate that the Supreme Court has been very fair in conducting this inquiry is this, that the woman was called for hearing twice. She was heard for 3 hours, and after that she decided not to participate in the inquiry for her own reasons. The Supreme Court had the option to say, because now she is not coming, we are closing the inquiry. But no, Supreme Court decided to continue with the inquiry ex parte and give a finding on that. Now see, what was the reason for which the complainant said that I will not participate in the inquiry? First reason was that she is being not allowed to have a lawyer in the hearing. The act which my friend was talking about in the panel is the Sexual Harassment Act. That act itself bars that there will be no presence of lawyer during the Internal Complaints Committee hearing. The Rule 7 of the act clearly says that there will be no presence of lawyer. So how can Supreme Court, you are saying that you should follow the law, but the law prescribes that there should not be a lawyer. Now coming to today's scenario, the lady has issued a statement saying that the report should be made public. Section 16 of the Act says that a report cannot be made public even under the RTI. The Act says, I have the Act in my hand, it says notwithstanding with the provisions of RTI, the report cannot be made public. So I don't understand where is the lack of fairness. On the contrary, I doubt that the complainant should have proceeded with the inquiry. Because if she is not participating in the inquiry, there is a reasonable apprehension that she had nothing to prove. There was no evidence, there was no witness, because that is the only case that she should withdraw from the inquiry. Because when the procedure is fair, when the judges of the Supreme Court are inquiring into the matter, I don't see any apprehension of any bias.
Let's not talk about you know, what it may mean, what could have been the motive, or what it proves. I don't think anybody wants to sit here and pass a judgment either on the Chief Justice of India or on the complainant, or talk about, you know, whether there are merits to what she's saying or not. The conversation we are having tonight is whether the right process was followed, and what is the right process, and if indeed what Ashish Dikshit is saying is the right process, and maybe there is a problem with it. Because in every other case, in any other company, in any other corporate, in any other workplace, the rules may function differently. Shouldn't that be for the judges as well? Now, Kavita was wanting to say something when Ashish Dikshit was making that point. My question to you is, the complainant chose not to be a part of this proceeding. So what's next? What happens from here on? She chose not to be a part of the proceeding, and findings are here.
Let me get back a bit and I'll answer your question. I think the complainant, when she put out her 29-page affidavit, which was sent to all the judges, made it very clear that since there was no in-house procedure for the CJI, there was no in-house procedure. In fact, you must know that there is no procedure for any, you know, sexual harassment case against any Supreme Court judge. The committee is only for lawyers and staff, which is up on the website. So she had asked that there should be a committee of a retired woman judge chairing it, with 51% women, a very reasonable demand. That's where you comply by Vishaka guidelines, of which we are the architects. Our organization was Vishaka, and I was the general secretary when we went way back in 1992 when Bhavi Devi case happened. And we have seen this whole journey and are very, very disappointed today by the Supreme Court, which just does not want to apply a law that it makes on itself. So let me get back to it. So secondly, there is no procedure in the Supreme Court for judges, leave alone the CJI. There is no ICC. So she had asked for an independent committee. And that was just right, because the law also says that if head of office is the harasser, in any other case it would go to the local complaints committee. But a Supreme Court judge cannot be judged by anybody who's an outsider. So it could not have gone to any local complaints committee. So therefore, firstly, what happened on the 20th is a black day of Indian judiciary, where the judge on whom the accusation is, who's the chief CJI, pardon me, but he sat on judgment on himself, defamed the woman. And after that, an in-house procedure takes off. Yes, the woman has a right to say that she wants representation. It may not be a lawyer. She was hard of hearing. There was a proper disability, which she explained. She had all the right to have somebody help her. That request was not complied by. And then, why was the proceedings not videographed? They are videographed in ordinary, we sit in committees, and where we know there will be a contestation, we always get it videographed, so that it's objective, and it should be videographed. And I think Mr. Dikshit doesn't know the law. Read Section 13. Section 13 of the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace, Prevention, Protection, says that very clearly, clearly says, Section 13 says, the report will be given to both the complainant and the respondent. So the CJI got his report, he's the head of office, In any case, he can access it. She never got it. So she has been let down once again. This so-called denial of the right to know is very serious. I'm telling you, we are so disappointed in the Supreme Court. It has gone against the principles of natural justice.
Okay.
It has failed us. We have gone back 50 years since the Mathura rape case where the Supreme Court stood up. It's shameful. I'm really ashamed today of knowing that my Supreme Court of India, where I will come for any case, can let me down so badly.
So
we are absolutely ashamed. And we stand with the girl in solidarity. Justice Chandrachud's argument and Justice Nariman that have a full bench. We stick to that. That is what we are demanding. Today, the police brazenly.
I take your point. Let me bring in Ashish Kavita.
I agree with Justice Chandrachud.
Yes, Mr. Justice, let me bring in Ashish to respond to what you are saying on the point of law. Yes, Ashish.
You know, Tanvi, the problem with these kind of activists is that they think they know everything and every other person does not know anything. The limited amount of law which I know, I said that the report cannot be made public. I nowhere said that the complainant is not entitled to report. First of all, she should understand that the spirit of the act has been followed. When you have a committee which is in the committee the majority is of women, you cannot say the spirit of the act is not followed. And when she herself says that the Supreme Court judge cannot be judged,
junior judges,
just a minute,
it has not been complied with.
Yes, ma'am, this
Junior
happens every time.
Don't
Listen to
No, it can't be every time, Mr. Ashish Dikshit, because I think this is an unprecedented situation. Yes, I think this is an unprecedented situation. So let's not make comments like this happens every time, because I don't think anybody has ever made such kind of a harassment charge against the Chief Justice of India. So we have to understand the gravity of the situation here.
Tanvi, let me complete. Tanvi, let me complete.
Yes, go ahead.
The judges of Supreme Court are not junior or senior to any other. They are equal, and the CJI only is an administrative head. The CJI does not have any disciplinary control over the other judge. And second of all, if you are not satisfied with the two women judge sitting in the inquiry and conducting the inquiry, God knows what else will make anyone satisfied. Another point, that when she says that she demanded a person because she was not able to hear, that is not the demand from the lady. The lady said, I need a lawyer to represent me, which is not permissible under law. You cannot pick one section of the statute and say I will follow this.
Please, I can read a letter out to you.
Say, no, I'll not follow it. I am sorry. If she is disabled, she will be provided with a typing copy. She said my lawyer was not present. I have read that letter. She said my lawyer should be present in the meeting. What is the purpose of the lawyer?
Please read the letter. You're not talking
just because you participated in the Vishaka case doesn't mean you know everything.
Okay, one last question, very quickly to Anubha. I have very less time here, but Anubha, do you think that leave aside the process that was followed later, that perhaps many people got just upset with what happened on April 20th, like Kavita Srivastava was also pointing out, that the day this complaint news came out, that the Chief Justice held this. Is that also the process, Anubha, if a complaint is made?
Absolutely not. See, the law is very, very clear. The Sexual Harassment Act is very, very clear, and the guidelines that the Supreme Court has is also very, very clear. The mandate of looking into a complaint of sexual harassment is only of the Internal Complaints Committee. And mind you, the Internal Complaints Committee, again, the law is very clear, needs to mandatorily have an external member, which was not in this case. So it only had 3 sitting Supreme Court judges looking into an allegation against the Chief Justice of India. It did not have an external member. So right there, the constitution of the committee was illegal. So anything else that they did, whether limitation is followed, etc., that's of no consequence, because the constitution of the committee is wrong.
Okay.
Secondly, the fact that even before the committee has looked into the complaint or any procedure has been set out, the person against whom the allegations have been made has used his office to speak up against that particular complainant. That is completely abuse of power here.
Okay.
And that is exactly the reason why
I think a big part of of the outrage actually began from that day when the Chief Justice of India presided over that hearing. I'm completely out of time, so I'm sorry I'm interrupting our panelists. The point here that I wanted to make is that if indeed this was the process, and the process was actually followed to the T, but there is a complainant who is unhappy. There are women lawyers and activists who've come out and said that this is not enough, that natural justice cannot happen via this, then perhaps we need to relook at the process to make it more easy for anybody who may be wanting to speak up. The Supreme Court in the past has upheld women's rights and stood by women in many, many landmark cases. We repeatedly talk about making work environments safe and more comfortable for women. Perhaps we should start with an ICC within the Supreme Court itself. I don't know if this is a larger conspiracy against the Chief Justice of India or even against our Supreme Court. That could too be possible. Will we ever know the truth? I'm not too sure. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.